Hello, my name is Aviva, and today I'm going to be reacting to all of your favorite books from this year. So I recently asked all of my Instagram followers to send me in your favorite book from this year, and you guys definitely pulled through. I got so many responses. Like, we're definitely not going to be able to get through all of them, but I wanted to say thank you to everybody who did send in a response, because without you guys, I wouldn't have been able to make this video. But I just plan to go through all of the ones that you guys sent in and kind of react to them. I'll let you know if I read them, if I plan to read them, what did I think about them, stuff like that. So let's just get started. So first up, we got Kingdom of Ash, which is the last book in the Throne of Glass series. Throne of Glass, one of my favorite series of all time. I'm surprised that you chose Kingdom of Ash though. Like, did you read Queen of Shadows or Heir of Fire or even Assassin's Blade? Like, personally, those are my three favorites from the series. But seriously, the entire series is amazing. So I really don't blame anybody for choosing a single book from that series as their favorite series from the year. Because like, if you asked me like, what was my favorite from the year? I definitely wouldn't have chosen just one book from the series. I just would have said like Throne of Glass, Next up, we have The Love Hypothesis, which, I mean, I'm not surprised to see it on this list, but personally, it was definitely not my favorite from the year. I thought it lacked extra romance. Like, it was more of a contemporary romance, heavy on the contemporary. Like, I went into that book thinking it was going to be an amazing rom-com, and it was cute, but it was very heavy on the science, which it wasn't bothersome to me while I was reading it, but like, I seriously, like, every other page, I was just like waiting for them to be together again. And if that comes up in a book for me, like, it's definitely not gonna be my favorite from the year. So I don't blame people for liking it. Like, I definitely understand its hype, but at the same time, like, it didn't live up to the expectations for me specifically, especially when people went and said like, oh, it was steamy. Oh, the romance was so amazing. Like, you could say it was a great book, but like the romance, come on, it was lacking. Like, if you're not seeing both characters interact on every single page or like thinking about each other or even every chapter, like, okay, I'm not going to be picky. It doesn't have to be every page, but like literally they should be interacting at least every chapter. And that book went chapters without them having an interaction. And to me, that can't be a favorite book. Next up, I have The Invisible Life of Addie LaRue, which again, I am not surprised to see it on this list because even though it came out last year, like maybe a year and a half ago at this moment, like it's still like all over my feed all the time. And I seriously do not blame its hype. I loved this book. I actually was like in a Target the day that it was released and I didn't realize it was being released. And then I saw it on the shelves and I'm like, oh my God, it came out. And I literally like purchased it like without even thinking. I brought it home, I read it. And then like 3 days later, I saw that it was like sold out everywhere. And I'm like, oh my God, how lucky am I to have been in a store and seen a copy and then like picked it up. And then it was like sold out for like weeks on weeks until they were able to start like reprinting it. And I remember like the second I read it, it took me, I think like 2 days to read it, but I literally like didn't put it down. Like, I was so invested in the book. I thought it was so different, so unique, so like, I don't know, like I heard that it took her 10 years to actually finish that book. Like, I don't know what took 10 years to write, but I guess she just like kept coming back to it and leaving it and coming back to it or whatever her process was. But like, I felt while reading it that like it was 10 years in the making. Like, I felt like that she put like every single word there specifically for a reason. And I thought it was a great book. So I definitely understand the hype for that one. I definitely can see how it was someone's favorite from the year. So good choice. Next up, I have It Ends With Us, which is by Colleen Hoover. It's probably one of the most hyped books of the year and happens to be, I don't plan on reading this. I don't personally know what the synopsis is about, but I have a friend who read it and she personally didn't enjoy the book. And she told me that like, she knows my taste. She knows I'm not going to like it. And because she said that, I have a feeling that there's either cheating in this book or like it's a second chance romance or there's something about it. Like, I've gotten vibes off of what the book is and I don't think it's going to be a book that is for me. And also, like, I've read a couple of Colleen Hoover books, this year. And while I thoroughly enjoy her work, I do know that not every single book she writes is going to be for me. So when somebody told me like, don't bother with this book, like, it's a tearjerker, like, and then the topics in it are just like, it's not going to fly with you. I'm just taking her word for it. And therefore I don't really plan on ever reading this book. But I'm happy that you liked it. From Blood and Ash. I read this one this year also, and I was a huge fan. I didn't like A Shadow in the Ember. I mean, for a lot of reasons. I made an entire vlog on it, so I'm not going to get into it, but I didn't like A Shadow in the Ember, but I was a huge fan of From Blood and Ash, and I even plan to do a reread like sometime in March before the new release comes out because, like, you know, I want everything fresh in my brain. Somebody said The Sweetest Oblivion, and I am all for that as your favorite series for the year or favorite book, whichever one you're referring to. The Sweetest Oblivion is the first mafia romance companion series that I ever read, and oh my god, did I love it. I'm not sure if it's going to make it to my top list for this year. I'm in the middle of putting my list together. That's why I thought it would be fun to go through all of this now to like see what your favorite books are, because I'm in the middle of choosing my own. But The Sweetest Oblivion is definitely one that is like, you know, in the running for my top list this year. Somebody else also said The Hating Game, which I can't blame you for either. I read The Hating Game this year also, and I absolutely loved it. Like, it was one of those unputdownable books for me. Like, I couldn't stop turning the page. It was that good. And I even just watched the movie, and I don't really want to get into a whole like thing about it, but I was a little bit disappointed. I definitely did not picture the guy to look like that, and therefore like the whole movie was kind of like ruined for me. Like, I really couldn't stand looking at his face, but like there were other things, but I'm not really gonna get into it. But basically, loved the book, and it also for me personally lived up to like the book is better than the movie thing. We also have The Spanish Love Deception, which I absolutely loved. Oh my god, one of my favorites from the year too. This one is definitely in the running for my favorites also. I was like blown away by that book. I thought it had like everything that I wanted in a book, like all mashed in one, like, you know, the workplace environment, the enemies to lovers, the fake dating, the traveling, the wedding, everything about it. It had like a one bed trope. There was just so much like packed into that one little book. And it wasn't even that little, it was like 400 something pages. But basically, I loved it, and I definitely see how it was your favorite from this year. Someone said Verity, which I'm almost positive is by Colleen Hoover, right? I don't plan to read this book because of all of the like reviews that I've seen good things, but I'm pretty sure this is like some sort of thriller. Like, it's just a little bit different than the regular Colleen Hoover books that, like, you know, she generally writes. And for some reason, I am just not pulled to read this book. I have like zero interest in it. Somebody said Regretting You by Colleen Hoover, and it's funny because I actually have this one on my shelves and I don't plan to read it anytime soon. I'm pretty sure you're following like a mother and a daughter as they each have their own romances, and I heard that it is very heavy on like woman's fiction versus like romance, and because of that, I am in zero rush to read it. I like a romance. I'm not really here for like the contemporary fiction stuff. So somebody said that to me, and therefore I kind of like bumped that way down on my TBR list. I'm getting like a ton of things for Throne of Glass and ACOTAR, which, I mean, some of my favorite series of all time. We've already went through this, but basically, definitely don't blame you for choosing that as your favorite. Somebody said Exodus by Kate Stewart, which, oh my god, I have been considering Exodus / the Ravenhood series as my favorite series of the year for like 3 weeks straight now. And it is in the running with like one more series, and I am seriously torn as to whether the Ravenhood series / Exodus or another series is going to be my favorite. So make sure you subscribe to my channel so that you could see when I post my top favorites of the year video. It should be coming out like at the end of the month, but basically make sure you subscribe so you don't miss when that comes out. Next up, we have Love and Other Words. I was extremely disappointed by this book. There is a trigger warning at the end of the book that nobody warned you about because it kind of is the like catalyst of the story sort of thing. But the thing is that specific trigger warning is what ruined the book for me. About a quarter way in, I realized what the ending is going to be. Like, I realized what the problem of the book was that made them not talk for a couple of years, and it totally ruined the rest of the book for me. And I literally was like, it was one of my least favorites of the year, and I'm very surprised that people love this book. I get the romance aspect of it. Like, their before romance, I thought was adorable. But then the thing that he did that ruined it for 11 years was so horrible and stupid that, like, I don't know, I was hoping for it to be a little bit something more unique. And then I wasn't personally a fan of their like now romance, like their 11-year later romance. Like, I didn't think it was anything special. So yes, I loved their like childhood romance, but like the rest of the book wasn't great. So whatever, I don't know. That's my personal opinion, but I'm happy you liked the book. I personally did not. We have November 9. I'm not surprised that I'm seeing like a ton of Colleen Hoover books on here. She's so hyped up this year. I swear, ever since Kylie Jenner said that she was reading It Ends With Us, like Colleen Hoover just decided to like blow up. And I think she's a great author, but like I said already, like she's not something that I'm going to be reading every single book that like she ever puts out. Like I'm going to have to like pick and choose which synopsises sound that like they're going to be up my alley. But I did read November 9 and I thoroughly enjoyed it. So I don't blame you for choosing this as your favorite book of the year. The Crown of Gilded Bones. That's from Blood and Ash. Definitely liked that book. I think my favorite from Blood and Ash though was Kingdom of Flesh and Fire. It just reminded me a lot of A Court of Mist and Fury, which is my favorite ACOTAR book. So Kingdom of Flesh and Fire was my favorite from this series, but Crown of Gilded Bone was great too. Next up we have The Maze Runner. You know what? I've never actually seen the books. I mean, I haven't seen the books. I've never read the books, but I have seen the movies and I loved the first movie and then it kind of like trickled off from there. Like I didn't like the rest as much, but I've seen the first movie like a ton of times. Huge fan. Somebody said All Roads Lead Here. And you know what? That was my first Mariana Zapata book that I ever read. And I was a huge fan. But then after that, I moved on and I read Culty and The Wall of Winnipeg. And I enjoyed those a lot more. So if you haven't read those two yet, I highly recommend it. All Roads Lead Here is amazing. But like Culty and The Wall of Winnipeg was even better in my opinion. Somebody said Warbreaker. And it's funny because I have that on my shelves. It's actually like right here, but basically I haven't read that one yet. It's funny because I read Mistborn and I absolutely loved it. So I then went ahead and bought Mistborn Era 2 and Warbreaker because Warbreaker was like, you know, a standalone and I heard that there's like a little bit of a romance in it. So I very much wanted to read it. And I read like Mistborn Era 2 at the beginning of this year. Like I read it sometime in January. And then I had planned to read Warbreaker like, you know, sometime in February. And then I just never did. And then the months flew by and it's still sitting unread on my shelf. Someone said Red, White, and Royal Blue, which I gotta say, I thoroughly enjoyed that book. I was very worried about that book going into it, thinking that it was getting too much hype, it's gonna disappoint me, and therefore I pushed it off for like months and months. I had it sitting on my shelf forever, and I was just like, I'm a little nervous to read it. Like, I don't think it's going to live up to the expectations that everybody's putting on it. And then I read it, and I thoroughly enjoyed it. I thought that it was a great read. I totally saw the hype in it, and therefore, I think you chose well for your favorite book of the year. The Deal. Oh my God, I loved The Deal. It was definitely my favorite from the entire Off Campus and Briar U series. Like out of all the 8 books, the first book was my favorite and nothing beat Garrett and whatever her name was, Hannah, Garrett and Hannah. I loved that book. I highly recommend the Off Campus series. It was my first sports romance. It's the book that literally put me on the journey to the books that I read today. So I will be forever grateful to Off Campus and Olive's Bookshelf for recommending it to me. Twisted Games by Anna Hong. So I'm actually so excited to read this. I had put it on my December TBR and I also recently put it on like my 5-star prediction list. So it is very comforting to see it on like your favorite books of this year because I am assuming that I'm going to give it 5 stars because I've heard amazing things about it. But also it is a book that I very, very much want to read very soon because I heard that the 3rd book is coming out sometime soon. It's either like the beginning of next year or the end of this year, somewhere around that time. And I don't want to miss the train of its hype. Like obviously when a new book comes out, all of a sudden it's going to be everywhere. So I kind of really want to read the first 2 books so that I could like hop on the hype train. You know what I mean? Daisy Jones and the Six. Okay, so I have this in my library and I don't actually plan on reading it physically. I had one time got it because I had seen it in like this like used bookstore. It was like a brand new copy and it was like $4. And I'm like, I know that name of that book. Like I see it everywhere. So I just like picked it up. And then I heard so many people tell me what's actually inside the book and the way that it's like laid out. And therefore, if I ever do plan on reading it, I'm going to audiobook it because I have heard that the audiobook is amazing. So I'm very happy that you enjoyed the book. I have heard amazing things and I am not surprised to see that on this list. I also kept seeing The 7 Husbands of Eglville and Hugo, which is by the same author. And again, I own that book. And the thing is I don't plan to read it anytime soon. I seriously don't know why I own it, but I've heard such good things about it. So maybe one day it'll hit me that I want to read it, but for now, it's just gonna sit on my TBR. Window Shopping by Tessa Bailey. Okay, so let's talk about Tessa Bailey for a second, because I've also seen a bunch of her other books on this list, like, you know, the summer book and whatever, and I read Tools of Engagement because everybody was hyping up Tessa Bailey and they were saying like Tools of Engagement was so good. So I read it and I was so thoroughly disappointed. I really didn't connect with the writing style. I thought that it was like very heavy on like, you know, the steamy moments, but like I wasn't really connected to the characters or the romance, like specifically, like, I don't know, I just didn't vibe with the book. And ever since I read that, and I saw the same people who said that they loved that book say that they love the other books by Tessa Bailey, I'm kind of just not down to read any of her books. Like, I'm kind of very nervous that like I'm gonna go into it thinking like, okay, I'm giving her a second chance because her newer books are going to be better, and then I'm gonna end up being disappointed. So let me know down in the comment section below if you have read Tools of Engagement and you've read her newer books like Window Shopping and the It Happened One Summer book, and if you saw that it was very different, because I didn't like the writing style. And I didn't love the romance so much, even though like the steamy scenes were okay, but like steamy scenes can never be okay unless you are connecting to the romance, you know what I mean? So let me know if you think I should give her a second shot or not. Somebody said Uprooted, which has been sitting on my shelves unread for like, I'm not even sure how long, but I was very interested in reading it at one point, and then I read A Deadly Education by the same author, and I absolutely hated it. So now I'm a little more nervous to pick up that book. I'm assuming that it's going to be very different because like it was written at very different times. It's like catering towards very different, you know, like readers, but at the same time, I'm a little nervous, and now I'm in no rush to really read it. The Folk of Air series. Okay, The Cruel Prince, I mean, super popular. I think it's been popular ever since it actually came out. Like, people haven't stopped talking about it. I did read all 3 books, and it was okay. I have read a lot better. I do understand why people like it, but I just happen to like personally think like if you read the Cruel Prince series, then you should read the Switch, Torn, and Ascend series by Amanda Hocking, the Trial series, and then tell me which one is better. And if you come back to me and say that the Cruel Prince is better, then we were just gonna have to agree to disagree. But I happen to think that Switch, Torn, and Ascend is like way, way, way better, especially in the romance department, and they're so freaking similar. So the fact that I read Switch, Turn, and Ascend first, and then I read The Cruel Prince, I was just a little bit disappointed by the series. Stay With Me by Mila Gray. I love the entire Come Back to Me series. It's kind of hard to choose which is my favorite. I liked Come Back to Me, Stay With Me, and then Run Away With Me, like kind of all equally for different reasons. So I'm happy that you liked Stay With Me the most, but I mean, that entire series is just so good. The Simple Wild. I liked this book. It wasn't my favorite, but I did read it and it was good. I see why, you know, you chose it as your favorite, but it definitely wasn't my favorite from the year. It's going to definitely fall into like the mediocre category. The Roommate. I did read this year and I ended up giving it 4 stars. I thought that it was a great time, and the only reason why it's not going to end up on like my favorites list / why I gave it 4 stars and not 5 stars is because of like the whole porn thing. Like, while I thought that it was a great book, you know, that like surrounded that topic, like it was something that like I never really read about, I didn't really know much about and stuff like that, I just wasn't particularly interested in reading like an entire book about the porn industry, and because of that, it was good, but it wasn't my favorite. So somebody said Hooked, which is so funny because the other night I found out that I got this gift card from Amazon. Like, it was a whole thing. I posted about it on Instagram, so I'm not gonna repeat myself here, even though you probably didn't see it. It was just like in the description of one of my posts from like whenever ago. But basically, I got a gift card and I was like sitting like on my phone for like 4 hours trying to decide what to get. And I was contemplating between getting like these 2 duets, like the Sinners duet by Sophie Lark and then the Anti-Heroes duet by Gianna Darling, and then Hooked, because it's been on my radar for a while and I've kind of been wanting it, and I was so close to getting it, and then it got bumped down and instead I got both duets instead of like one duet and then Hooked. So I very much want to get it, and it is probably now the #1 spot on my want to buy list, but I haven't gotten it yet. but I do plan to. So somebody said Ugly Love, and I gotta say, if I didn't guess what the ending of the book was gonna be, literally in the first chapter, I probably would have die hard loved the book. But the cover of it kind of gave it away for me. And then once I started reading it, I'm like, oh my God, I just guessed the ending. And if I'm right, then that's gonna be really funny. And it was funny because I was vlogging it at the time, so I even got to document it, and I ended up being right. So the whole time I was reading it, I kind of knew where it was going, and therefore it didn't hit as hard for me, but I totally get why you loved it. And if I didn't guess it from the beginning, I probably would have like die hard loved the book too. The Fine Print. This is on my wish list also. I very much want to get it. I have read the Dirty Air series by Lauren Asher also. I mean, not the whole thing. I read the first 2 books and I really liked it. So I do want to check out The Fine Print. I'm happy to know that it was your favorite from the year. A Discovery of Witches. Oh my God, I love this series. It was one of my first adult series I've ever read. I read it right when I started reading, and it is still one of my favorites to this day. I really have to do a reread of that. It really makes me smile to see so many Ravenhood series and Maid series on this list. Like literally like every other thing is either like It Ends With Us, the Ravenhood series, Exodus, The Sweetest Oblivion. I mean, it happened one summer. Like I'm just getting like over and over the same book. So I'm not surprised to see that, like, you know, that's why they are so hyped, because it was literally like people's favorite of the year. But like a lot of these are like, you know, I've seen like the same books like 10, 15 times here. So I'm trying to find some stuff that like I haven't talked about yet. Like the After series, I have seen the movies. I have not read the books. I don't plan to read the books, but I'm not surprised that it's your favorite because, you know, I see it all over the place and I know people are obsessed with it, but I've seen the movies, so therefore I know the topics of the book, and I'm just not down to spend all that time reading it, if you know what I mean. But anyway, the Crave series, I plan to read this when the last book comes out. I already have it pre-ordered and I already own the first 3 books, and I'm very excited to read it. I've heard great things. I'm so down for like that paranormal romance, like living in a school sort of vibe. So I'm very excited to read that. I'm very happy to see it on the favorites list of the year. I've also seen so many like Six of Crows stuff, which is really cool to see that it's being like, you know, re-brought up this year because of the whole Shadow and Bone release back in April. So I thoroughly enjoyed that series also, but I didn't read it this year. I read it like, I don't know, a year, like 2 or so years ago, but I very much liked it. So I'm very happy that you liked it too. Birthday Girl by Penelope Douglas. So this year I read Birthday Girl and Punk 57. And after reading both of them and flying through the book because I didn't want to put either of the books down, I still ended up very uncomfortable by her books. And I've decided that I don't really plan on reading anything else by Penelope Douglas. I feel like she writes on this line of like, you're either going to be uncomfortable by her work or it's going to be just weird enough, yet you enjoy it. And I'm kind of like right on the edge of like, I enjoy it, but I'm uncomfortable, you know? And therefore I decided like, I'm just not gonna bother with her stuff. Like I saw a lot of, what's that book where like, you know, she ends up getting with like her stepfather and everything. Whatever, I'm going to put it up on the screen. I just can't think of the name right now. But basically, I don't really plan on reading this book because I definitely think that that is going to be a book that is going to end up on like, you know, it's going to make me extremely uncomfortable, even though I don't want to put it down sort of thing. So I just decided like, Penelope Douglas, I just don't think is going to work for me, even though I definitely understand the hype of her books and I definitely understand why people like it. It's just not like something that's going to vibe perfectly with me, and I'd rather read some other stuff that I know I'm going to enjoy a little bit more, you know? So somebody said The Devil Wears Black by LJ Shen, and it's really funny because this year I read the Sinner of Saints series and the All Saints High series by LJ Shen, and I was a huge fan. So then after I finished that, I wanted to go and see what else I could read by her that like people really enjoy, and I did come across this book, but I haven't gotten it yet. So it's kind of one that's just like kind of on my radar, but I'm not really so sure about it because I don't know, for just like multiple reasons. I'm not sure if I'm going to vibe with the other books by LJ Shen, even though I really enjoyed the Sinner of Saints series, but like then the All Saints High series was kind of like just okay for me. And therefore I feel like LJ Shen is like a 50-50 if I'm going to enjoy her or not. And therefore I don't know if I'm going to bother with this book, but it is something that's on my radar and I'm like highly considering checking out. Okay, so I have to apologize because I'm only like halfway through this list and I really don't want to go through the rest of them. I feel like we could literally sit here forever and chat about books. books, but I didn't want to make like this video an hour long, so I'm only going to do one more book, which is the Addicted series by Christina, which I have seen at least like 4 or 5 times on this list already. And again, I'm only halfway through. So all I'm gonna say is that I just finished this series and oh my God, did I love it. It is in the running for my favorite series of this year. And I really do think it's going to hit that #1 spot, but you're gonna have to wait and see. So you're gonna have to make sure that you're subscribed to my channel so that you could get notified when my favorite reads of this year comes out, so that you could find out if the Addicted series or the Ravenhood series or some other ones that I'm thinking about ends up getting that #1 spot for my favorite of the year. But basically, if you enjoyed this video, please give it a thumbs up. If I didn't mention the books that were your favorite from this year, you can leave them down below because I'd love to see some more of like, your favorite books of the year so that I get some ideas for what to add to my wish list and stuff like that. But anyway, I know I already said this, but make sure you're subscribed. Again, like this video, and like always, thank you so much for watching. Make sure to check back in tomorrow because there will be a new video up. I'm doing Bookmas. There's 31 videos for the 31 days of December. Every single day I'm posting a new video. So make sure to come back tomorrow. And anyway, until then, enjoy reading.